everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this week. My name is Julia Mayetta, and I am pleased to announce this week's lecture. So this week's lecture is part of the 12-week didactic series for the No Neuropsychology Didactic Series that brings you lectures from experts in the field covering different topics each week. This series was created by trainees and early career neuropsychologists to provide free, high-quality didactic opportunities. And we would like to thank our sponsors for their financial support for the series. Before we start, here are the disclaimers for the series. This training is not meant to replace formal education in neuropsychology, and the views of the speakers are their own. Questions can be submitted via the Q&A box on the lower left of your screen, and a recording of today's lecture will be provided on our website later this week. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists for today's lecture on social media and networking. We've got three panelists today. So Dr. Christopher Howard is a neuropsychological postdoctoral fellow at the Utah State Hospital, where he conducts neuropsychological evaluations, directs the cognitive remediation program, and assists interns and graduate students with their respective clinical work. He is also a researcher at Brigham Young University's MRI research facility studying the neurobiological heterogeneity that exists in schizophrenia. Dr. Howard's interests include cognitive aging and health disparities in underserved populations. After his fellowship, Dr. Howard aspires to develop a memory clinic at a historically Black college or university to provide memory care services to communities who may not otherwise have access to such resources. We're very pleased to have him with us today. Our next panelist, Dr. Monica Rivera-Mint, is a cultural neuroscientist and a board-certified neuropsychologist, is past president of the Hispanic Neuropsychological Society, HNS, and is a tenured professor of psychology at Fordham University with a joint appointment in neurology at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Her multidisciplinary community-based research is funded by the Alzheimer's Association and NIH National Institute of Aging and primarily focuses on the intersection between cultural neuroscience and health disparities in cognitive aging. Her Alzheimer's Association research grant to promote diversity funded study is examining Alzheimer's cerebrovascular and sociocultural risk factors for dementia in older Latinx adults. Dr. Rivera-Mint is an appointed standing member of NIA's Clinical and Translational Research of Aging Review Committee and is the recipient of several awards for her research, teaching, and contributions to the field, including the 2019 Hispanic Health Leadership Award from HNS. I'm very pleased to have Dr. Rivera-Mint with us as well. Dr. Monroe Cullum, our other panelist, is a professor of psychiatry, neurology, and neurological surgery at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center, where he also serves as vice chair of psychiatry and senior neuropsychologist in the Peter O'Donnell Brain Institute. He holds the Pamela Blumenthal Professorship in Clinical Psychology and is board certified in clinical neuropsychology through ABEP. Dr. Cullum is involved in research, education, administration, and clinical service delivery in neuropsychology. He has a long history of leadership experience, including his role as the current president of the Sports Neuropsychology Society and past president of the National Academy of Neuropsychology and the Society for Clinical Neuropsychology, APA Division 40. His research focuses on short and long-term effects of concussion, as well as neuropsychological aspects of neurodegenerative conditions and the use of telehealth techniques in neuropsychology. So without further ado, I will pass it along to our panelists. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. Glad to be here.
It's good to see everybody. It's a shame we can't all be in one big room and then have breakout groups and a happy hour later, but this is as close as we can get. I'm very, very happy to be here and part of this, this interesting group. Is there an initial question that we want to start with, or do we just start on our respective topics?
If you'd like to start on your respective topics, then we can jump in with questions afterwards.
Dr. Rivera Mint, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Cullum. And I should say, actually, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I say that because I've known Monica since she was a wee little student. So,
True. Well, in height, I probably still count, but it's been a minute. It's been a minute. Yeah. So it's really great to be here. So Monroe and I go way back, and he's always been such a supporter and advocate for especially early career people and people throughout their career trajectory, especially women and people from other diverse groups. So it's actually so amazing to be here on this with you and with you as well, Dr. Howard. This is so great. So I'll go ahead and get started. And in a way, I think it's actually apropos that we're meeting in this online format because we're here to talk about social media and networking. And we're doing both, I guess, right now through this venue. And I was tweeting about this event right now and earlier today, so I guess I've already been tweeting. And this is my cat, Dylan. We're big cat people, so we might get cat bombed a couple times. Sorry about that. So what I wanted to talk about actually was the use of, and I'm happy to answer any questions, but I wanted to talk about the use of social media for science and social good. I think that this is a tremendous way for us to get connected. And 2 points. Number one, I was slow to, I feel like I was slow to uptake on social media, but I took a sabbatical, I guess now a year and a half ago, and that was my year of yes. And during my, like a Shonda Rhimes year of yes. So I had my year of yes. And during my year of yes, I said yes to Twitter and started using it for work. And it turns out that that's an incredible place to connect and where everything seems to be happening from an intellectual perspective. So it seems like if you want to learn about the latest grants, the latest announcement, the latest paper research that's going on, opportunities for early career folks, it's certainly an intellectual hub where I feel like no other place you can find out up to the minute, what's going on. And in that way, it's an incredible way to also network. In fact, I just got an NIH, National Institute of Aging grant that looks like it's going to be funded because now a dear collaborator of mine found me on Twitter and was interested in what some of the topics that I was discussing, reached out, asked me if I wanted to be on a grant, and I'll shout him out right now, Dr. Robert Turner II, who's an amazing sociologist at George Washington University. He's a former NFL player as well and a big advocate for Black male brain. In a grant now looking at Black male brain health because we got connected on Twitter. So I think there are these incredible opportunities for genuine interchange and exchange of ideas, and especially for early career folks, for women, for all of my LGBT and non-binary friends, and for people of other diverse backgrounds, Black, Latinx, all the rest. I think that it's especially important to find our voices on platforms like Twitter, because otherwise we will be invisible and silent. And I think it's very easy to be quiet. And I will say that that's something I've struggled with, but I have found, I think a wonderful community with people like Dr. Block, Dr. Dugan, Dr. Reyes, Dr. Cullum, people here who I'm connected with. And I highly, I'm a big fan and highly recommend that people work at least in little ways to get engaged, because I think it's really important for multiple reasons. I'll stop there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And it's kind of like the evolution of social media, because I remember, I think when I first got on Twitter, I think maybe I was fresh out of undergrad and I was reticent to do it because I'm like, I don't have that much to say and different things of the sort. But it kind of went from, okay, me just texting my high school friends and college friends and talking about sports or hip hop and other things to like really having a network. And I think what Twitter does, or social media, Twitter, however you want to define it and stuff like that. I think one of the things that it does is like it does several things. It provides access, and when you think about like what it takes to be a good clinician or advance through the field and stuff like that, one of the things that you look at is opportunities. Like just by being on Twitter, like I learned about opportunities such as the Michigan Center for African American Aging and Research at the University of Michigan, which was a phenomenal program. But I don't think I would have known about it otherwise until like I just see several people tweeting about it. I was just like, well, you know what? Let me just take this leap of faith and apply to it. I think something else that it creates is mentorship, particularly being like a student. Well, I guess I'm not a student anymore, but being a person of color in this field that is largely white, which is fine and stuff like that. Mentorship sometimes is hard to come by, but when you see some of the greats and the giants in the field tweeting and doing different things and stuff, and you're having access to them and you can ask them questions. How did you do this? What do you think about that? Or, hey, you know, I know nothing about Grant because my program wasn't research oriented, and they can provide information. I think it really levels the playing field. And one of the last things that it kind of does is that it kind of creates like a in-person CV. Because if you think about like when you apply to internship and when you apply to postdoc, it's like you're just trying to get all this information crammed into like one little thing. But sometimes when you engage with people on social media and you can kind of show your expertise or you have similar interests and can kind of build on it, it really helps. So definitely, I think social media is something that's definitely worth pursuing. And it's just definitely something to be mindful of. Absolutely.
Well, I'm the old guy here, so I'm a little old school on some of this. I love the old-fashioned, let's go to the INS, NAN, the SNS, HNS meetings, and you know, press some flesh, shake hands, although that may never be a thing again, but at least an air fist bump or something. But this really fits. It's ways of highlighting the importance of connectedness in our field, and it's vital for everyone's careers, whether you're in private practice or if you're in research or if you're in a university or medical school environment, you're doing some of each. It's absolutely vital. You've got to get your name out there. That's what it's all about. And I think the the social media it offers a way of doing that. So as Dr. Howard and Dr. Dr. Rivera Mint, sorry, my screen was small and it showed me big for a second there. Anyway, so as they were pointing out, you know, getting your name out there is important. It's a good way to meet people, because that's what we do at the conventional meetings or the conferences, right? So and then watching what your mentors do, we used to, you know, tag along with them, follow them around during meetings. I remember when I was in graduate school working with Aaron Bigler, I would go to the meetings that Dr. Bigler went to, and I would follow him around and meet all these, you know, big wig names in the field and just be in awe of everybody at the board meetings. And then as I got to do my internship and postdoc with Nelson Butters, Nelson stressed the importance of socialization into the field, social interaction in the field, and really getting to know people. So one of my assignments, and Nelson knew I was a little on the shyer side of things, one of my assignments at INS when I first started working with him was to go to every party I could find. And it wasn't to, you know, overindulge or anything like that, but it was to meet people. So if there was a party at, you know, Oklahoma or UCLA, and if you got the opportunity, go meet people. It's so important. And then what I want to emphasize is getting involved in organizations. I really encourage people to do that. We have a very friendly field. Any of you, as Dr. Howard was saying, any of you can email anybody in the field that you want to, and I will bet you 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a response, maybe not right away, but it'll be favorable, it'll be supportive, because we're all in this field. We came through the educational process to get our advanced degrees, our advanced postdoctoral training, and work on our careers. But we also are very dedicated to bringing others along in the field. And it's so important to do that. But I don't know anybody that would just shun you know, interested interns, postdocs, graduate students, even undergraduates, reaching out to them and getting in touch with them. You know, we want to give back to the field that's been so important to all of us. But the importance of all of this is to get your name out there. You need to get, and now your face out there as well. So I've read, you know, a lot of work by individuals in the field, and yet it's through the committee work, through some of the organizations that I've been involved with, that I've really gotten to know people. And then you make those important connections that will pay off, you know, for yourself, not to sound Machiavellian about it, but it'll pay off either in the short or the long run. Dr. Rivera Mint had a great example there. You know, a Twitter contact that ended up being a invitation to participate in a grant. I mean, I've got people that had applied to our doctoral program at UT Southwestern, maybe didn't get in, they got in somewhere else, they're on their career now, and now they want to collaborate in research years later. It's a great field. And everyone is pretty much in it for educational purposes, as well as the clinical opportunities and the research opportunities. So the networking is really essential. Whenever we take groups of our students to any of the big meetings, we always encourage them to not play what we call herd ball. If you've ever had little kids playing soccer, they just follow the soccer ball around. And it's one's inclination to hang out with the people you know at the meeting. And so if we see all of our students standing together, we go over, Laura Lakritz and I in particular, will break them up and say, scatter. Your job is to meet people, interact, and make connections, because that's so important as you're applying for not just internship or postdoc, but jobs, grants, collaboration opportunities, etc. And it's both helpful. You know, social media has been a great venue to help maintain us during this time. I don't think it's a replacement for personal interaction, and I can't wait till we're back together again in meetings, which I'm going to throw in a quick plug for the Sports Neuropsych Society. We're hoping to have our in-person meeting in April in Denver, so hopefully that'll be one of the meetings we get to start getting together again. But these are the sort of things that a lot of folks don't really think about. You know, we're all in training and in constant education. We're in classes, we're listening to seminars and things, but there's a huge social aspect to our field that is so important and so rewarding. These friendships, I mean, I just am delighted following Dr. Rivera Mint's research over the years, ever since she was an intern back at UCSD. And there's been a long line of them. I've had my own long line of trainees. And, you know, our field was sort of built on the basis, kind of like behavioral neurology does. That is, your training lineage is something that's important and you should be proud of, and you should look it up too. There's some online resources. You can look at your neuro ancestry. And it's just kind of cool to see how related people are, and then what the impact on the field has been, because your impact on the field, and I mean this to everybody listening, is going to be much larger than what is reflected in your CV or it's reflected in the patients that you've helped along the way. So it's just really rewarding, but it's all about getting your name out there. All right, I'm going to shut up for now.
No, you're perfectly fine, and you're absolutely right. And something I was thinking about, I guess the reverse of social media is like when you do certain pet projects and stuff, you're able to get that out. Like because I graduated from Adler University in Chicago, so one of the things that I did while I was there, me and a couple other people, we developed this organization called Advocates for Community Wellness. And what we do is that we would go to different, disparate areas of Chicago on the west side, East Garfield Park, West Garfield Park, Austin, North Lawndale, South Side, Beverly, Auburn Grisham, just different communities and stuff, because understandably, like neuropsych is like really big, particularly in Chicago. But when you look at some of these communities, it's not a lot of neuropsychologists in those communities. But if you look at the data, African Americans, we develop Alzheimer's at a rate of 3 to 4 times of other groups of people. And Dr. Barnes had this amazing article where it's like African Americans, 75% who have dementia have a mixed pathology, whereas white individuals, they have a 50%. So you see these large things, and what you want to do is that you want to get information out so you can support these communities. And social media has been like an amazing avenue to do that. So you can just really get information out. And because people have questions, not just people in the community, but people in the field, because one of the things that you always run into is people's like, as America continues to diversify, how can we continue to diversify the field? How do we leave the ivory towers and work amongst groups of people who won't normally have access to mental health care resources, who live in mental health deserts, who don't trust a field. And it's so interesting to say that when I think about it, because numerous places where I've been, like, amazing, amazing opportunities and stuff like that, I'll work with people of color, and one of the things they'll say is, can I trust the people here? We understand it's a world-class institution. We understand there's big name professors, huge research. How does that affect me? Like, what does that do for me? So when you kind of do social media and you're reaching different churches, you're reaching different Black letter Greek organizations, you're reaching HBCUs, you're reaching people from different places and stuff, they have an opportunity to ask questions because they say, hey, we trust you, we grew up with you, we've done all these amazing things with you. And it's not like we're texting or, let me call you on the phone. You can have dialogue in person in actual time and stuff to help remediate these issues. So I think social media works both ways. Not only is it a good opportunity for budding and upcoming clinicians or anybody in the field, but it's also an excellent way to advocate for individuals who may not otherwise have their voice heard in terms of mental health disparities.
Great
Really good
points,
point.
both of you. Yeah, what a wonderful example of what I was talking about before too, about the power of social media and these types of digital engagements to make meaningful impacts in the community. This is all about science for social good, and I think that's such an incredible example of it. Wonderful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's exciting. It's exciting to see how things continue to unfold and, like, just how different people tend to incorporate it. Dr. Manley is phenomenal at Columbia.
Yeah.
And, she was one of the ones who kind of inspired me, like, because I think it was AIC and her group, the Man Brick Labs, like, they were just tweeting, because I was supposed to present, but, like, it was like coinciding with the day I was going to start internship. So I was just like, I won't be able to make it and stuff. I kind of want to know what's going on and different things. So, like, just her organization, like, just mass tweeting everything and her being so down to earth where I could kind of engage a little bit. I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Let me shoot you an email. Well, not even shoot you an email, but let me jump in your DMs and introduce myself. So it definitely makes things that would normally be more challenging a lot easier. And she was so receptive to it. And I thought that was really, really cool because it just kind of humanizes the people in the field.
Absolutely. And she's so great. Just
Yeah.
period. Yeah. We love Dr. Manley.
Absolutely. Another UCSD alum. So
That's right.
you raise a really good point, though. It's for a lot of, especially more shy individuals, it probably would have been easier for me to tweet to somebody years ago than join them at the UCLA party or whatever it was that Dr. Butters always encouraged. But the response that Dr. Manley gave to you is really typical of what I think most people in the field will tend to respond that way, or put you in touch with somebody who's doing work in that area, or is willing to give career advice, etc.
Oh, absolutely.
Also, I would encourage people, don't ignore your own mentors either. So even though you're done with training, people love to hear how you're doing down the road. And keep following up with people on Twitter, on email, whatever it might be. Even your college professors. So I was honored by my undergraduate institution last year with a big university award, and some of my professors had put me up for it. I haven't seen them since I graduated college, and it was a wonderful reunion. They were aware of the work I was doing, and we're friends on Facebook and Twitter, and follow each other. And it's really kind of cool to also give back, not to the field, not just to the patients, not to our colleagues alone, but also to those that have trained us and impacted our lives as well. Because it's a nice way to keep up with what's going on. In fact, one of the questions I see posed there is like, what all sort of things do you tweet about, right? Do you tweet about your latest trip or your latest bicycle ride or how far you ran or something like that? That's a very individual decision. I mean, I would use some judgment in that. If you're into something that's just really, really weird, you wouldn't want everybody to know about, I'm not sure I'd tweet about it. But then again, it can be a way of giving people a real feel for what you do in your downtime too. I don't know, what do others think of that?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, you could go, Dr. I didn't want to cut you off, Dr. Rivera.
No, Dr. Howard. First of all,
Oh,
Dr. Howard, you can call me Monica. You go first. I have
I'm so
I have a little bit of a longer response. You go.
I'm so new to the field. I still got some bad habits. But yeah,
Not a bad habit.
but it's definitely interesting. And I was talking to a friend about this. It's kind of because it's like, okay, I'm a budding professional. I've been on a couple podcasts, just a couple of things and stuff like that. And she was just kind of like, when you tweet, granted, you always got to be mindful. I think that's always the biggest thing is being mindful of what you tweet, because even if you like something, it resonates with like all your followers. So you definitely have to be mindful. But at the same time, it just kind of shows that you have personality. It just shows that you're not just this one clinician. And it's so funny because it's just my regular Twitter account that kind of, you know, turned into like the one that I use, not professionally, but just, when I want to, engage with people and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I never like really put anything like, too crazy or anything like that. But what it does is just kind of show you. And what you kind of start looking at is just the intersectionality of neuropsych. Like I really enjoy hip hop. Um, Before I signed an honor code at BYU, I used to really enjoy cigars. But what ends up happening is that these things begin to blend and these things begin to mix. And what ends up happening is that you start finding different ways to integrate these things. And in a way, it just kind of pushes the field forward, which is a good thing. Like, so it's not like turning off your personality or turning off who you are and just being this stoic neuropsychologist individual, but it's showing like, yeah, I really enjoy the neurosciences, but also I'm active in my community. I'm active in my church. I'm active, whatever the case may be. And these are how these things blend. And this is how we push the field forward.
Bravo. That's a great response. I see, there's not, maybe because we're on a group Zoom, there's not the option for the little stickers, because I would have given you an applause or a thumbs up. So I'm just doing analog thumbs up and applause. Also, I'm sensitive that there are some questions in the Q&A, and I'm hoping that Julia or one of our other hosts can moderate those in a little bit, because I would have trouble multitasking. And I also want to say, I don't know if folks feel comfortable to take a Zoom picture snapshot at the end, just to post it if anybody's live tweeting, but that would be fun. But I wanted to share a list of the top 7 things that are useful to do as you engage in social media that I was advised on. I've been lucky enough to be part of some leadership institutes as a woman and a person of a diverse background and a researcher. And so I've pulled together some information, and I want to share the 7 top things that if you're thinking about getting involved in social media, the things that would be helpful to get started. Because sometimes what I hear is that people are a little bit overwhelmed, just like we've been talking about here. So number 1, choose platform. So choose the platform that, like, you can be on multiple platforms, but for some people, there's one platform that feels a little bit more organic than others. So, for some people, definitely Facebook. For others, Instagram. For myself, it's definitely been Twitter in terms of my my professional engagement. So for me, it's Twitter. So number 1 is choose your platform, and certainly there are ways to coordinate your posts. Number 2, build your network. So start getting connected. So it's not just about you putting out your content and your messages, because it's such a communal experience. So really build that network and identify people like Chris, to your point, like Dr. Manley or the Mandrake Labs, or Dr. Cullum, or people for whom you have an affinity, and build that network organically that way. Number 3, I encourage all of you, each of you have, I'm seeing the list. I didn't realize there were so many people who've joined. There's over 100 people here, which is so great. Wow. It kind of threw me back for a minute. I wasn't ready for that. So hi, everybody. I'm so happy you're here. See some familiar names as well, which is nice. But number 3, you all have such unique expertise. So be a thought leader. Don't be afraid to be a thought leader in this public space of intellectual engagement. I think that's so important, to have your voice heard and to have it be your true, authentic voice. Certainly, to Monroe's point, with making sure that there's no TMI and you're being appropriate. But I think that to be brave, not only to create a safe space in your social media, but to create a brave space to share your work and other things, I think is really positive. Okay, so that's number 3. Number 4, post regularly. So if you want to build your social media experience and build that network, you need to post regularly and engage regularly. That's very important. Number 5, follow and repost other people's content. So again, it's about that active interchange. And for people who are Twitter users, to retweet, to share, that's that kind of creates nodes, and people get, then you connecting to other people in this incredible web of connection and intersectionality. Number 6, join events like this for Know Neuropsychology. This is such a great event, and I have to actually give it up and applaud everybody who's been such a thought leader and trailblazer, all of you here who've organized it, for making this happen. And this is in itself such a beautiful example of how you can increase capacity for research, for education and training through these valuable tools that require time and some thought, but then just as connecting, it's incredible. Let's see, number 7, I believe, is that 7? I'm having trouble with my working memory, but I think I'm at number 7, which is to keep it social and have fun, right? So this is something I guess also to Chris's point of, sharing bits about yourself. I recently saw something by one of my favorite neuropsychologists who was sharing about some shows that he likes and some people he was giving props to after the Emmys last night. So I think that's really fun to create this 3-dimensional kind of connection between us. It's lots of work maybe, but not all work. So those are my 7 points, and I can copy that and live tweet it while others are talking as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions about it as well. I'll be quiet those a lot.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, I think that's great advice. I was making a note of those 7. I don't do too many of those. Like I said, I'm the old guy here. I don't do much tweeting. I encourage others to tweet. I will occasionally do something. So what I've done is like for me, Facebook is kind of the more personal thing. I do family stuff and more private, quote private, right? There's no privacy, but and then Twitter, LinkedIn, and other social media sort of things are more professional oriented. But then you can blur those lines and say, hey, just saw a great movie today. Anybody else catch this? And you'll be surprised who might respond to you. And other times, and you don't need to worry if somebody doesn't respond, right? It's out in there in the Ethernet land. So it's not like you're at a cocktail party and Monica just shuns you. It's not like that. I'm just teasing her because I know her. Actually, I know Alex Tran is on here as well, and Alex was one of our graduate students, and he can attest to our encouraging students to get your name out there, get to know people. And I think the whole social media thing and the whole pandemic is really emphasizing the importance of this. It's not something this is a medium that's here to stay. Just like teleneuropsychology is here to stay at this point. We hope to augment it with in-person meetings again, but I think the future of our field is really looking at hybrid ways of interacting, but definitely interacting.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, everyone. I do have a few questions I want to kind of get into a little bit here, if that's all right with you all. It sounds like you guys have already touched on the social media and kind of keeping a personal account for your family members and so on. But obviously social media, depending on your settings, can be a very public sphere, particularly for Twitter and some of these other platforms as well. We've had a few questions about balancing that clinically as well as in any other domain. But what do you do about clients, for example, who find you on social media or try to friend you or things like that?
I'm going to defer to others as I'm not doing much clinical work these days.
Yeah, I haven't had too much experience with patients or clients contacting me via social media. I'll occasionally get a note or like on. I usually try to refer to more conventional clinical channels, if you will, like contacting me at my clinic number, or shooting me an email or something like that. Obviously, I would just be very mindful. Anything is going to be recorded or forwarded or retweeted or something like that. And one area I think clinicians need to be very careful about is in the medical legal area as well, because if you, let's say you tweet your views on a certain disorder, or wow, no one with ADHD ever does this, or whatever it might be, you're going to end up doing a court case at some point where they're going to have a record of what you've tweeted or what you've said. So making sure that you're keeping things on the up and up, and probably in general maybe avoiding certain really hot topic political things, but that's your choice. But just do keep in mind once it's out there for sure. But I haven't had too many. I have had some friend requests. And I ignore most of them. So if I've not responded to anybody online today, I apologize. But we can follow each other, and that's all kind of fun. And you find out what people are up to. And actually, sharing the research. I know Monica's really good at this also, but there are times when I find that somebody's posted an article on Twitter or the link to it. It's before I even saw it through any of my professional connections or the journal channel. So it's really very, very active. During content, Jan, awesome too. Hey, I just heard this great talk. I follow Chris Giza also. He's big in the whole concussion world, and he's always tweeting about something. And I think he prides himself on his number of followers too. I don't get into competition with numbers of followers.
One of those things where not everybody who sees it says something. So fortunately, leading up to this point, I work usually with, older people and stuff like that. So they haven't really, reached out or looked for me, but I wouldn't be surprised if other people who I've worked with along the way I'm not on LinkedIn and stuff, but try to Google me or try to find me on Facebook or, Instagram or Twitter or anything like that. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that I would be wary of, like, oh my God, they saw that. No, but, it's just one of those things that you're really, really mindful of because, it happens. I remember I was teaching at Morehouse College. And, I guess I was a difficult professor or whatever, but, I'm sure they were looking at my social media in order to understand who is this Chris guy who's making these difficult tests and teaching this class and stuff. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things to be mindful of. And sometimes it can be a fine line. And I definitely agree. It's important to stay away from politics or hot button issues. But sometimes you do ease down that rabbit hole. And it's important to be mindful of who you engage with and like how do you respond and stuff like that because certainly you have a lot to lose. So I guess it's just really about being careful and just like setting certain privacy parameters just to make sure that everybody doesn't have access to you, particularly if you're posting family pictures with friends, relationships, everything of the sort. I mean, I definitely think it's a healthy balance, and I think it really kind of boils down to what you really feel most comfortable with.
Thank you, everyone. I think those are really good points across the board. I want to make sure we have some time for talking about in-person networking, even though we're not doing a whole lot of that right now. We've had a few questions about networking at conferences and how to get involved in different committees, and any advice you may have for the more introverted trainee or anyone dealing with kind of social anxiety in these in-person situations.
What may be really helpful is like if you're going to a conference and there's a professor that you're interested in working with, or there's somebody that, has an interest kind of related to yours and you kind of know that they're going to be there, I would definitely send them an email a couple days early, like, hey, this is who I am, this is what about, this is where I'm from, this is what I study, and this is how what I do aligns with what you're doing. And I wonder if we could have like a cup of coffee and allocate like maybe 15, 20 minutes during the conference or something like that, you know. Because, you know, I mean, I've been dubbed as a social butterfly. I don't know how true that is, but, you know, sometimes it's just making the right preparation so that way you can have that time versus you trying to be noticeable and amongst a group of other people. Um, or sometimes if, you know, I guess that's really that's the best one is just really set up a meeting in advance and just having a couple talking points what you want to do. It's like an informal formal way of meeting somebody, and have your resume updated, your CV updated.
Chris, I love that advice, and I actually got one of my most wonderful. All my students are wonderful, but I got a great student through that process. He found me ahead of time. We met and had coffee at INS, and we started doing research together. Eventually, he applied to our doctoral program here at Fordham University in New York City, and now he's a postdoc at Stanford University. Travis Scott, I'll say it out loud and proud. So you know, that's an example of how that can work.
You know, that's really amazing that you say that because I mean, because I when I say things, it's not what I heard, it's what I know.
Okay.
Because that's how I met Dr. Stringer, like way back in the day when I lived in Atlanta, and I thought I wanted to become like a neuropsychologist or whatever. And I used to work at the psychiatric hospital and work overnights. And Dr. Stringer had this book, so when I would work overnights, I try to get books so I can read or whatever. And was adult diagnosis, and it was almost like reading Greek. So it was already difficult to read, but trying to read at 12 o'clock in the morning was even more of a formidable task. But eventually I just sent him an email. It's like, hey, I'm just a master's student. I want to be a neuropsychologist, African-American neuropsychologist. Perhaps can we meet? He invited me to his office, and he answered my questions so thoroughly. Like I had like a list of like 5 or 6 questions. He answered so thoroughly, and we were like 3 minutes in, and I was just like, all right, what do we do? But it really blossomed into a really good relationship as he was on my dissertation committee, as I had an opportunity to do 2 advanced practicums at Emory Department of Rehabilitation Medicine, and just an opportunity to say, you know what, you look exactly like me, and everything that you do, from the way that you walk, the way that you do research, the way that you have your office, I can mirror that and I can learn because, like I said earlier, it's not a lot of opportunities for mentorship. So it's just one of those things. It's like, how can I create an opportunity that may not be there so I can like take advantage of it, and it really helps build my career. So definitely, like, if you're nervous about it, send an email and just be prepared. I mean, preparation is really
Right.
key.
Right. And of course, Dr. Stringer is so great. So I'm not one bit surprised by that example. That sounds like a, you know, classic Dr. Tony Stringer. But, you know, but it does speak to being brave and, you know, kind of getting out of your comfort zone. And I also want to echo, for those of you who might have missed it, what Monroe said earlier. Everything he said about going to conferences, following your mentor around, going to the parties, going to the events, even if it's just for a little bit, to get out of your comfort zone and do it is so good for you. And like you said, Monroe, like that's, you can make these incredible connections and friendships that end up lasting your whole, you know, into your life and your career, that are really, really valuable. I don't know if you want to say more about that, Monroe, but I thought what you started saying was really
Yeah.
important.
No, I was just gonna say, figure out who you'd like to meet. Ask your mentors who you'd like to. Hey, you know, tell me when Dr. Stringer is at the meeting. I don't know what he looks like, or I don't, I remember introducing postdocs years ago. They wanted to meet Edith Kaplan, so as soon as Edith walked in the building, oh, there's Edith, you know. So come meet Edith, and they were like, oh my gosh, that's Edith Kaplan, you know. And we can all be, you know, all have been starstruck, even within our own field at times. But yeah, attend especially like the happy hour, the social hour events. That's not a time to goof off and go out with your best buddy, you know, and just the 2 of you to a bar, or, you know, or a restaurant or something. Social event is a social event. If you're at a meeting, take advantage of it. Find people's students and ask them, hey, you work with Dr. Roof. I would love to meet Dr. Roof. Oh, awesome. So that's another way to connect. Also, find them at their talks. Go to their talks. You want to hear a talk by Bob Heaton. Go to the talk by Bob Heaton. Introduce yourself at the end, or at least find out what he looks like so you can catch him at the social hour later. If people are involved in posters, a lot of us have students that are presenting. If we're not doing something like that, find the posters with the names of the people you want to meet. And my students always come to me and they put out APBs that, hey, I want to meet so-and-so, I want to meet so-and-so. So during the whole meeting, I'm trying to keep an eye out for them. And then when I see so-and-so, I say, oh, I've got a couple students that really want to meet you. And then I try to make that connection and send them around to find each other. So yeah, you do have to go outside of your comfort zone a bit. And it does take time. There's no question. A little bit of social anxiety, but you just have to push yourself and do it, or to work with someone on how do I do that. So you meet their students, right? How approachable is Dr. So-and-so? Well, most of us are pretty darn approachable, even if you're nervous about meeting them.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask questions. That's the biggest thing. Like, and I always say this, and I always try not to, because I know I tend to be a little bit more social, but when you go to a place, like, okay, you're there, you're present, but so are a whole bunch of other people and stuff. So one of the things that really kind of helps you stand out or kind of distinguishes you is like when you ask questions, because it kind of shows that you're engaged. And what it does is that it creates like a line for communication, because I ask you a question, they have to respond. Perhaps there's a follow-up question, or you exchange emails, and now you kind of have the inroads into that person, because now you're talking about something interesting. So it's just really important to like really ask questions and have a list of like maybe 4, 5, 6 questions that you want to know about. Not something like, oh, you already know the answer, but you're just trying to get a response, but something that you're genuinely curious about. And I mean, you pretty much should, because if you're interested in the field and you're up and coming clinician or whomever, or wherever you are in that juncture of life, like you should be curious about different things, and you want to ask a question to show that, hey, I'm committed. Like, that's one of the biggest ways to show that you're committed, is by asking questions. So it's not just about being present, but it's about showing you that I'm engaged or willing to be engaged.
Thank you, everyone. We've got a couple more minutes, so we'll do 2 final questions. First one is any advice for, or if you've witnessed any kind of networking faux pas, whether that's on social media or in person, or kind of things to avoid if possible. And then we'll finish up with one final question after that.
Not everything needs to be on camera, be on tape and stuff. Like, when you meet people, take advantage of the moment. Like, sometimes people are so enamored with a person or with a professor or whatever the case may be, that the emphasis switches to, okay, let me take a picture, let me do this, and what you're doing is that some people aren't camera friendly per se. I'm sure it's a better word, but camera friendly. And people, you want a video recording, you want to tape something, and that could be like really off putting. And you have to remember that this is kind of like a pseudo interview. I mean, if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul to a certain extent. But like, if you do something totally egregious, that's going to be like a marker in the memory. Like, when me and this person hung out or we did whatever, they did whatever, and I don't want to have anything to do with them. And just position to, like, when you're taking advantage of the moment, you're relaxing, and people are open up and still being fully engaged, then that's something that's really good. But not everything that happens needs to be on camera.
Monroe, do you have any advice?
That's a good one. You want to be noticed, but you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to be, oh, I remember that gal who asked me these ridiculous questions. You don't want to dominate. Like if you're in a group of people. I know there was one year we had a bunch of graduates. They wanted to become graduate students, and one was just dominating, question after question. Oh, Dr. Cullum, I read your article from '86. What was that third finding? And I'm like, what article in '86? And then, so you don't want to be that person, but you, as Chris was saying, you want to be interested. So but it's just kind of general awareness also, being a good person, being a good neighbor, and abiding by general social rules, I think is the general convention. So I guess my advice on social media, I wouldn't put anything on there I wouldn't say to somebody at a meeting.
That's good advice. That's very pragmatic, good advice. I also want to note that somebody on the Q&A was asking about our Twitter handles or our social media handles. So everybody, we should follow each other. So I just posted mine. Somebody else did. I'm going to follow them on Twitter. in a second. And I noticed that some of the folks running today's program have also been live tweeting and others. So that's great. Thank you. The one thing, there is a question about like dealing with the negative, and if like there are arguments or disruptive comments. And, you know, if it's verbally abusive or inappropriate, say on Twitter, I would say, sorry, this is one of my adopted cats here, but I would say that I would just block them. I wouldn't put up with it. I would block them because I don't think that's appropriate, and I wouldn't accept that in real life, and I wouldn't accept it in virtually either. I will say that I just for people to be mindful when they're doing Zoom events, to try to take all security precautions ahead of time that you can. I don't know if any of you were at a session that I was moderating a research conference panel discussion this summer, and we had a Zoom bomber, and it was I'm an Afro-Latinx Indigenous neuropsychologist, right? And it was a health disparities panel that I was moderating with lots of investigators from diverse backgrounds, and we had a Zoom on who came on and started writing the N-word and saying the N-word and started taking off his clothes, which was really, really terrible, and felt like it could have been really traumatic. And it was one of the worst moments in public that I've ever experienced. It was my first time presenting at this conference. There were a lot of people there I respected. And I think that we have to remember that these things can happen, and that you need to keep you can make all the best, kind of preparations, and then something terrible like that can happen. And I think at that moment you have to respond with a sense of compassion for the people that you're with, and make sure that they're okay, and deal with it. Just, deal with the problem as quickly as you can. Have a plan for who's going to get them out ahead of time, so you can end that virtual abusive terrorist behavior immediately, and just make sure that people are okay, and then take a moment for yourself as well. So that's from a live, real life example.
Absolutely. I think it kind of comes down to like knowing who you're engaging with. I think that's a big one, because sometimes you have these political zealots, or just have whatever type of zealots and stuff, and you're not going to change their mind one way or another. And what ends up happening is that you just waste ample amounts of time going back and forth, and it doesn't look good even when the conversation's over with. But then periodically you have people who, they might have different ideologies, but they're open to dialogue and conversation. I think it was just a couple of days ago, the sports newscaster, he made this sort of innocuous statement, and I kind of addressed it, whatever. And me and this other person were kind of going back and forth, but it wasn't like this malicious going back and forth. But what it was an opportunity to really talk about societal injustices, systemic racism and stuff, and to use examples. I feel like I was in a class, because I was pulling all these articles and being like, hey, you say like privilege doesn't exist, but look at all these disparities and all these other things that do it. And, it's just kind of like a chess match where he was saying one thing, I was saying another thing, but it was respectful and tolerable, and it was just an opportunity to learn. So I say all that to say is that you just really have to be careful with who you engage with, and what's their underlying agenda. I think that, especially because like social media is like, you can get really comfortable, but you don't really know who's on the other side of the screen. So just really being mindful.
I think that's a great point, and also a really good transition to our last question for the day. Someone asked in the chat, I'm wondering, you mentioned staying away from hot button and political issues on professional
Oh, I
social
thought I was
media.
answering that question. My bad.
However, as social media is such a great platform for social justice advocacy, how do you balance avoiding these hot button issues while also meeting a commitment to advocacy?
I think what Chris did answer that question. I think in large part. I mean, I think it was my comment earlier about avoiding certain things. I mean, it depends what the topic is. I mean, if it's truly a hot button topic, and it's something you might want to avoid. It depends on what it is. If it's social justice issues, that might be a whole different case. If it's are you rooting for the Dallas Stars tonight or the Tampa Bay Lightning? Who's on the side? There are collegial debates we can all have. I mean, like the topic of CTE is really, really something. I do a lot of talks on that, and there there are people on polar opposites of the side, but you can have intelligent, learned discussions about them. I think as Chris was alluding to, if there's clearly something where, you're going to get into, religion, I'm not sure that's the best platform to debate things like that.
Yeah.
I agree. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's you.
Yeah, no, I just agree with what Monroe was just saying. Things like religion and things that we probably wouldn't talk about at a cocktail party or in other kind of public settings. I think probably are better left unsaid, to Chris's point, right? But issues of social justice, especially as they relate to science and just really like health, because the prism for me is everything comes down to just ethics and science. And from there, I think we can have very reasonable conversations about all kinds of things.
Absolutely. I know me personally, like I tend to, aside from hip hop and different things, I tend to post a lot of things about, societal inequities. Have an opportunity to work with the people at Rush Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in Chicago. Really sparked this whole community neuropsychology idea. And, at the time, one of my exes, she was earning a degree in public health, and, we would help each other with research. I was like, yo, this is interesting. This is what the field needs. So I tend to post a lot of things that kind of revolve around societal injustices and mental health and African Americans and stuff. And what ends up happening a lot of times is that people want to know more. And it's not necessarily the people that you think would want to know more, but it's just different people because I got a decent following and stuff like that. And when you engage people, like they learn because a lot of times if they don't run into us, they're not going to know. They're not going to know otherwise. But because they feel comfortable with us, kind of like what we're saying at the beginning of the podcast or the Zoom, is that we enlighten the masses through social media and stuff. And when you can have dialogues, a lot of times people end up saying was that I thought like this, but I didn't know because whether it be redlining, whether it be uh, disinvestment, divestment, or just butcher that word, but like taking resources out of a community and stuff like that. And when you have an opportunity to engage and enlighten people, it really helps. I say all that to say is that while being careful, it's important not to like limit yourself to I'm just a neuropsychologist and I'm just a statistician, but it's like, how do all those things mix in the real world? And so I think it's just important to, be a real person, I guess. I don't know.
Thank you for those answers. I think those are definitely good points for everyone. And thank you all so much for being here today. This has been a really wonderful discussion from some experts in the field in this area for sure. So we will end the meeting today. Everyone, please do join us next week. We will have Dr. Kevin Duff on Tuesday instead of Monday next week. So tune in for that. Emails will be going out on Wednesday with the information, and they're also on our website. And then if our panelists will just stick around for a couple of minutes, we'll do a group picture. So thank you, everyone.